It was as sudden as it was brutal and relentless. Ukrainians woke up to find themselves plunged into the midst of war. Explosions and air raid sirens ringing out here in Kyiv and cities across this country as Russia launched a full-scale invasion on multiple fronts in the early hours of this morning, firing missiles at key military infrastructure sites. This evening, its troops are reported to be advancing from the north onto Kyiv. Other cities that have been targeted include Odessa, the major port on the Black Sea, and there are reports of hundreds of explosions in Mariupol tonight, which is located close to Russian-controlled territory. But also in towns like Lutsk in Ukraine's west. It shows the breadth of the assault from the Russian military. Ukraine has declared martial law, urging citizens to take up arms to defend their country. There are reports of heavy casualties already on both sides. And as the West threatened to cripple Moscow's economy with devastating sanctions, an ominous warning from Vladimir Putin to any country trying to interfere. You will face consequences you have never seen before, he declared. The dawn chorus that no one wants to hear. Air raid sirens in Kyiv, signalling that the full-scale invasion of a European country in the year 2022 was well underway. This was Antonov International Airport, 15 miles from the center. And these were Russian helicopter gunships. This airfield is now being used to bring in the troops that will storm the capital. This was the airbase at Melitopol in the southeast. Russia's strategy? Dominate the airspace by preventing the Ukrainian Air Force from using it. And this was in the far west, about 100 miles from the Polish border. So much of this large country is under attack that the best option for escape from the capital, population 3 million, is still to head west, towards Poland, in the traffic jam from hell. At the central bus station, a mayhem of desperate departures in a year defined by them. First Kabul, now Kyiv. These people are running away from the Russian soldiers knocking at the doors of the capital. Running to any bus that will take them, always west. Now imagine doing this with your kids. Your whole past, present and future suddenly reduced to one suitcase and one burning question. Can you make it onto that bus? Where's this bus?
We are trying to get to Poland.
To Poland?
Yeah, and fly from Poland, but to be honest, I can't see it happening.
Yeah.
So we don't have any buses to take us anywhere.
Are you scared?
I'm okay for now. I'm alive, but you never know what will happen like in 5 minutes, so...
Can you imagine living in a Ukraine run by one of Vladimir Putin's puppets?
Oh, that's a disaster, of course, no.
But that's what might happen.
We hope no, but I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, to be honest.
The Russian tanks keep coming. These were filmed a few hours' drive north of Kyiv. Soon they will enter the city. And this was the man who dispatched them overnight. In Moscow today, seemingly relaxed despite or because of the chaos that he's unleashed, at a business conference dealing with the fallout of sanctions.
То, что происходит, вынужденная мера. Ну, просто не оставили никаких шансов поступить иначе. Риски в сфере безопасности создали такие, что другими средствами отреагировать было невозможно.
The denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. That was his outrageous justification for all this. The first based on a lie, the second a euphemism for invasion. He may feel that he's on the side of history, fulfilling his legacy as Vladimir the Bold, the modern Tsar who is resurrecting the Russian Empire by occupying Ukraine. But not everyone in Russia has bought into his mission. This was an anti-war demonstration in St. Petersburg, Putin's beloved hometown. Could the invasion create a backlash against him? Early days. But that was certainly the hope of this man, an unshaven and distraught-looking President Zelensky addressing the Ukrainian people.
Ми вже видаємо зброю і будемо видавати для захисту нашої землі всім бажаючим, всім спроможним захищати наш суверенітет. Від кожного громадянина України залежить майбутнє нашого українського народу.
He appealed to their courage, summoning the millions of citizen defenders, telling them to take up arms, imploring them not to panic. So how's that going? Thanks to the invasion, it's rush hour every hour with the clock ticking, also at the main train station. The trains in red are the ones cancelled because the destinations have come under attack. Outside we find Irina, who's been unable to buy a train ticket and who's packed her entire existence onto one cart. What's your message to Vladimir Putin today?
Vladimir Putin, please, go out to our country. Go out, go out. We don't want you. We don't want war and we don't want you. But if you come, it will be very bad because I know our army, I know our people. Now it's panic, but tomorrow it will be all in one and then it will be very bad for you. Please go out from here. Just go out.
And just a quick update on the news story here in Kyiv. That airport that we showed you, the airport of Antonov, 15 miles to the north of the city, that was taken by the Russians earlier, has apparently been taken back by the Ukrainians. That is according to the office of the president here in Kyiv. We'll give you more updates, of course, as they arrive. Now, within the last hour also, we've been getting pictures from the exclusion zone around the Chernobyl nuclear reactor, which has reportedly been captured by Russian troops. An advisor to Ukraine's president said that their forces had lost control of the highly radioactive site after putting up fierce resistance. Earlier, a Ukrainian Interior Ministry official claimed that if the Chernobyl depot was destroyed by artillery strikes, then radioactive dust would cover Ukraine, Belarus and other EU countries. Gosh. Well, in Washington, D.C., President Biden has just been giving a televised address from the White House. Let's hear a bit of what he had to say.
Putin's actions betray his sinister vision for the future of our world, one where nations take what they want by force. But it is a vision that the United States and freedom-loving nations everywhere will oppose with every tool of our considerable power. The United States and our allies and partners will emerge from this stronger, more united, more determined, and more purposeful. And Putin's aggression against Ukraine will end up costing Russia dearly, economically and strategically.
Well, back in Ukraine, the authorities are reporting 57 military and civilian deaths and 50 on the Russian side, although those numbers are sure to climb. Much of the fighting so far has been concentrated in eastern areas, especially around the second city of Kharkiv, as well as the Black Sea ports of Odessa and Mariupol. Russia claims it has destroyed more than 80 military targets. While our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, is in the eastern city of Dnipro, where shelling was heard before dawn this morning. Lindsay.
Matt, things are quiet here at the moment, and certainly the people of Dnipro will be hoping that they remain quiet overnight. Now, we didn't start our day here. We started our day in Kramatorsk, further to the east, really near what used to be the front line. The whole country is the front line now. But what I mean by that is it's about 50 miles from the separatist areas. Those are the areas which Russia has controlled since 2014. And there was a lot of fear in Kramatorsk that the Russian troops would come straight across, right into Kramatorsk. Now, there has been skirmishing along that, what used to be called the contact line. And many of the people I met, they just weren't sure what to do. One woman I talked to this morning said, well, look, I work in an orphanage. What should we do with the children? I'm going to have to take them somewhere, but I don't know where to take them to. We decided to head a bit further west, so that's why we came here to Dnipro, passing many people in traffic, not in traffic jams, but in queues for petrol. That's what people wanted. They didn't necessarily know where they were going to go with the petrol, but they knew that they had to stock up. People were also stocking up in supermarkets, SIM cards, all of the things that they might need. And this war which is unfolding in Ukraine, north, south, east and west, it's all over the country. But this is how it started, first thing, here in Dnipro. All of Ukraine is a front line now. The night sky even lit up here in Dnipro. as Russian missiles hit a military depot on the outskirts of town. At dawn, a military airfield near Poltava to the north was targeted. Explosions echo through peaceful villages, agricultural fields, and now battlefields. Well, wouldn't you cry? I'm alone, she says. Where should I run? Where should I go? My God. She's in Mariupol, one of the most vulnerable towns, just near Crimea, territory Russia annexed 8 years ago, when President Putin started his land grab for Ukraine. This afternoon, a military facility on the outskirts of the town was smouldering. The Russians had attacked the radar and other equipment, the destruction of air defences across the country being their priority. Here are Russian military vehicles driving through Crimea, apparently on their way to Ukraine. A security camera filmed tanks crossing from Crimea, the southern flank of today's land invasion. And more CCTV, this apparently showing a missile strike on a warehouse in the Black Sea port of Odessa, west of Crimea. At dawn in the eastern town of Kramatorsk, after overnight explosions, people I met seemed stunned as they started to queue for cash. What will you do now? Will you stay here or will you try and go west?
We don't know yet, because this is happening all over the country. So where should we go?
As we drove west, we passed long queues for petrol. Everyone wants to fill up, even if they don't know where to go, or if they just want to defy the invaders.
I'm going to fill my tank and go fishing.
And what do you feel about President Putin this morning?
Why is he coming to our country? We can sort out our own problem. Why interfere in our lives?
A fighter jet releases a missile. What has the baby done to deserve this? Over the border in Russia, missiles target Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv. A residential block was hit, killing at least one person. Ukrainian firefighters do what they can, but pensioners who once might have seen Russia as a good neighbour are now homeless, and Ukrainians face another night of fear. One of the things which is important to understand is, where do all these pictures come from? Now, some of those pictures we took ourselves on our journey, but others are taken by ordinary Ukrainian citizens on their iPhones, and then there are news agencies everywhere. The Ukrainian authorities are also putting out pictures. This is the modern world, where pictures come from everywhere. You can see what's going on. The Russians have not closed down the communication system. What does that tell us? It tells us that they want the world to see their power. They want the world to see what they're doing. And this clashes with what the Americans and the British and their intelligence agencies were doing before. What that they hoped was that by shining a light on the preparations, this would make Vladimir Putin think twice. That's why there's been so much information in the last 3 weeks or months, with President Biden and others saying, this is what he's going to do. We know he's going to do it. We have all the intelligence. And yet that didn't stop him. Because I think that what Vladimir Putin wants is not just the Ukrainians to feel his power, but for the whole world to see it too. And that is going to be the challenge to the system that we have at the moment. How do you stop him? How does the West stop him? Especially if they're not going to send their military here. And they say they're not going to send their military here. The Ukrainians are going to have to fight this alone. And they're fighting a much superior force.
Lindsay Hilson in Dnipro, Ukraine. Well, all this, of course, is moving very quickly on the ground. So let's take a look in more detail at exactly where military action we know about is taking place. Jonathan Rugman is here with me. Jonathan.
Krish, this is a multi-pronged advance, which is clearly aimed at taking over a sizable chunk of Ukraine. We don't know how much at the moment. The Ukrainians are talking about over 200 attacks today. Clearly, there's the fog of war, there's propaganda on both sides. But what a lot of those attacks seem to be about is achieving Russian air superiority prior to any massive advance of Russian troops. That shouldn't be too hard. There are over 1,000 Russian combat aircraft versus about 120 in Ukraine. But what we know about the troop movements so far is that they've crossed the border from Belarus, from the northeast near Kharkiv, from Luhansk in the Donbass, the disputed region in the east, and from Russian annexed Crimea. That was annexed in 2014. There have also been explosions near big cities, including Lutsk and Ivano-Frankivsk in the west, and there have been helicopter attacks on airports and one on the military airbase of Hostomel near the capital. Now, what we don't know is how far Vladimir Putin is prepared to go. Is he really doing all this because he wants an assurance that Ukraine is not going to join NATO? That seems like ancient history now. This seems much bigger. This looks like an attempt to install a puppet regime which is favorable to Moscow and in Moscow's orbit. Will he fight in Kiev to achieve that, or will he just hope that he can go to the borders of the capital and that there'll be some kind of surrender? We just don't know the answer to that. But I think one of the very worrying things, if you're Ukrainian, is that if you look at what Russia has done in the past, in Chechnya, and when it intervened in the Syrian civil war, which began in 2011, it is not afraid to inflict civilian casualties if it doesn't get what it wants. And I think that's something that many Ukrainians will be very worried about tonight.
Jonathan Rugman.
By the way, as you might have noticed, those buildings behind me are not quite as lit up as they normally are, including the Foreign Ministry over this shoulder. And that's because they don't want to draw attention to themselves when there's a very imminent danger of Russian jets flying over the skies of Kyiv. Well, I'm joined now by Ivana Klimbush-Tsindzadze, who was the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine in charge of European affairs. Thank you very much for coming back on the programme, Ivana.
Thank you.
Is there anything that the West, in hindsight, do you think could have done to stop what is happening right now to your country?
Well, obviously, we can discuss that at this moment, but I think it's already will be in vain. I think preemptive sanctions could have worked. Preemptive actions would have worked against Russian Federation, and not only disclosing the information that was available to intelligence. As we see, this is not something that stopped Putin from acting. We all were listening into what President Biden had to say today. Just a couple of minutes ago, we also listened to what decisions Britain has taken. We are waiting to hear also that what the EU has decided. But you know what? We all woke up this morning at 5 a.m. in the morning to the blasts and shellings, and to the sound of blasts and shellings. And it's 17 hours since then. And only now we are hearing that all the pre-agreed sanctions are going to be introduced. I think a much, much wider action should be taken against Russian Federation, starting from SWIFT being cutting off for Russian companies to use it, banking systems, maybe Visa and MasterCard. It's not something that they should be having the privilege of using as well. I think, you can go on embargo on Russian gas and oil.
Sure.
That will be challenging for your people. But I understand that if we do not really, really stop him, it's not this wave, the wave will be hitting not only Europe, but the whole world. And you know that Chernobyl is already under Russian occupying force. I think that's another very serious
yes, we just reported that,
concern.
Just on the airport, which is important, of course, we reported that actually, according to the President's office, your forces had taken the airport back that was supposed to be used perhaps as a staging post for the occupation of Kyiv. Can you confirm that?
I hear that after that there has been yet another fighting, and my understanding is that at this moment we have destroyed the lane to which the planes could be landing there at Hostomel Airport.
Okay, because once that airport has been taken, then of course the next thing that will happen is probably the occupation of Kyiv itself, where people are afraid that politicians like yourself could be arrested, perhaps even killed or certainly detained by the Russians. Are you afraid that this might happen? Is this something that you've been working towards, trying to avoid?
It would be stupid not to be afraid. I think, yes, we understand that we have been on the Russian ban lists for quite some time. So everybody who has been pushing back on Russian aggression since 2014 is among those people who are a target. And obviously, as a former Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration, as a current MP and chair of the European Integration Committee, I totally understand that it would be strange for them not to include me in that list. Yes, I am worried. Yes, I am probably even scared to an extent, but I think that it's about, you know, necessity to be in touch with others who are thinking alike. That helps us to stand together, but also it's devastating to watch that the world is not reacting as strongly as we were hoping that it would.
Let me ask you this, Ivana. The Russian government apparently wants this government here to surrender. Will they? Can they?
You know, it's the government that was elected by Ukrainian people. I would hope and pray and encourage them, and sending them, you know, all of my support in this particular moment, even though I'm from a position to actually stand against these demands of Russian Federation and not give up on the country. I think that would be devastating for any beam of light of the future for Ukrainian people if they surrender and if they agree to actually evacuate.
And very finally and briefly, can you imagine life under a Putin puppet regime here in Ukraine?
No, not for me.